Japan up close.
I first saw Rakugo when I had been in Japan already for 5 years. And I saw it in a small, tiny yakitori shop in Yokohama. And I loved yakitori at the time. I used to go to this shop. I loved yakitori so much that I went to this yakitori shop 8 times a week. But the owner of the shop was also a rakugo producer, a local rakugo producer. And he said to me, if you like Japanese culture, then we have a rakugo show once every 2 months in our shop. Why don't you come? And in the second floor, there was ozashiki, which is the tatami room, and they turned it into a theater. Maybe audience of 30 people or something like that. And 2 storytellers took turns. And for me, they were wearing kimonos, and they came on to like the shamisen music, and they kneeled down on a cushion, and they created a world in the imagination of the audience. And so it was like love at first sight in Japanese. Hitomebore. The first time I saw Rakugo, I thought, this is what I was born to do. So it kind of struck me immediately. When I first came to Japan, I didn't know any Japanese. So even if I saw Rakugo, I wouldn't understand it. So it would be, if you go see Kabuki, then even if you don't understand, there's the great costumes and the movement and the drama and the makeup and the dancing and all of that. You can enjoy many aspects of Kabuki without understanding Japanese. But with Rakugo, it's just like, hello, anybody there? Hello, who is it? Oh, it's you. It's like if it's like, konnichiwa, iteru ka? Konnichiwa, oh, dare ya to omotta ra omo hagarina. All these things changing his head movement. It's not very fun if you don't understand. So luckily, by the time I saw it, I already spoke some Japanese, so I just fell in love at first sight. Well, Rakugo is very conventional in its own way, but like if you think about Western stand-up comedy, Rakugo has a lot of similarities, actually. So with Rakugo, you have the first part is the introduction, and it's called makura, which is the pillow. And the second part is like hondai, which means that's the story proper. And so the storyteller's turning their head to the left and right and playing characters. And this story might be 100 years old, 200 years old, 300 years old, etc. But the makura, the introduction part, that's the storyteller's own material, own comedy. Little jokes, they say kobarashi, like short jokes, or little anecdotes or observational humor. So the first part, that's actually very, very similar to stand-up comedy. But the second half, where you're doing traditional, that's very different from stand-up comedy because in the West, nobody does old stories like that as part of their stand-up comedy show. So it's very much the same and very much different at the same time. Well, the stories I learn from my master or other masters because they're very old stories. So that's the way to make those funny or comical. You just have to experience it in front of an audience again and again and again. But for my makura, for my introduction, my own comedy, that I get my ideas from basically from everyday life. So you're not really making up material. You're noticing material. You get antenna. So when I'm talking to you and some other friends over drinks, then maybe you say something a little bit crazy. And I think, okay, I can use that on stage. And the next day I might use it on stage. So it's really everything comes from real life.
For example, when I went to the convenience store to buy some soap, I thought the Japanese word was seken. And I kept saying it, seken, I need a seken. Tell me where the seken is. And the convenience store, the person doing their job, and then I said, I don't understand what you're talking about. So I had to find it myself. And I said, this is what I was looking for. This is what I want to write. What is the proper Japanese pronunciation for this one? He said, sir, the proper Japanese pronunciation is hando soap. And that happened to me at a convenience store, but now I remembered it, and so it's a good episode for the stage. You just have to get used. Every audience is its own challenge, really. It's not like a American audience is this and a London audience is this. It's like tonight's audience. What kind of audience do we have? Is it younger people? Is it older people? Is there children in the audience? Do they like maybe puns, wordplay? Would they like a deeper story? You're always trying to read the audience and give them the kind of performance that they're looking for. So that's the challenge. But that's no different than performing rakugo in Japanese in Japan. It's the same challenge as performing it for non-Japanese in other countries.
You have to translate the story, so that's a bit of a challenge. But what I noticed very early on is that really
to try not to do too much when you're translating. So you'd say in Japanese chokuyaku, which is direct translation, and very simple translation is best. So sometimes I think people might tend to try to do too much. Like try to make rakugo, oh, now I'm in New York, so make it New York style rakugo. Or now I'm in London, so make it London style rakugo. You shouldn't do that. It's the same rakugo all around the world. Just translate into English. So when you get to that point, then the job becomes very, very simple. Not very much, no. Try to keep them as close to the same as the original as possible. And there's no need to change them. They're very funny stories. So just direct translation. Obviously, I'm changing them because I'm putting them into English. And this year I will be performing in French, in Italian, and in Chinese. Hopefully, Chinese is still coming slowly. I love performing in New York because it's Broadway. I love performing in New York because the New York audiences are very educated about live performance and the response is very enthusiastic, very great. I also love performing in London in the West End. It's amazing. Same reason. The audiences there are so intelligent, always looking for something new, always looking to not just laugh, but they're really looking forward to learning something and getting a taste of Japanese culture. This year, I'm really looking forward to 3 shows I will have in May in Montreal, in Canada. That will be my first shows in French. There will be more. There's actually 2 more right now. They just finished their apprenticeship, their shugyo. One is from Canada and one is from Sweden. So I assume more will come. If more non-Japanese, if more foreigners want to do it, then they have to find a master and do a 3 or 4 year apprenticeship and learn the craft. That's all. But I don't think rakugo itself does not need to change in order to become international. Rakugo is already perfect. You have to be able to speak Japanese, and I don't think that should be changed. Because I don't think you can properly do rakugo if you don't have a background in understanding Japan to some extent, Japanese manners to some extent, Japanese language, especially polite language, that kind of thing. You really need that, even if you're just going to do it in English.
Japan up close.